Your heart is not doubting because you stopped caring. It is tired because it has been caring for too long without rest. You have believed, waited, hoped, forgiven, adjusted and trusted again more times than anyone sees. What feels like weakness now is actually exhaustion from staying open when it would have been easier to close. There is a particular kind of fatigue that comes from faith itself. Not the loud kind that argues or rebels, but the quiet kind that simply grows heavy. You still show up. You still pray, even if the words feel thin. You still do what is right, even when nothing seems to move. But inside, something whispers that you cannot keep leaning forward forever. This is not loss of faith. It is the cost of carrying it alone for too long. When the heart is tired of believing, it often hides it well. You keep your tone steady. You do not complain much. You tell yourself others have it worse. You remind yourself of past mercies. Yet there is a subtle shift inside. Promises that once brought warmth now feel distant. Scripture that once steadied you now feels quiet. Not empty, just quiet, as if the sound has moved farther away. This is where many people misunderstand themselves. They assume something is wrong with them spiritually. They think they have failed, grown cold, or become ungrateful. But the truth is simpler and more human. The heart was never meant to carry hope endlessly without being held in return. Even faith needs shelter. There is a moment in the inner life when effort no longer produces strength. You can push, but it does not help. You can explain, but it does not relieve the weight. You can remember better days, but memory alone cannot nourish what is tired now. This is not the moment for more striving. It is the moment for something gentler and deeper. Faith is not sustained by intensity. It is sustained by trust that you are allowed to rest without everything falling apart. Many people believe that if they loosen their grip, even slightly, everything will collapse. So they stay tense, they stay alert, they stay braced. Over time, this posture exhausts the soul, not because God demands it, but because fear quietly replaced trust. When your heart grows tired of believing, it may be asking for a different posture, not a stronger one. Less leaning forward, more being held, less explaining yourself to God, more allowing silence to exist without panic. There is a kind of prayer that does not speak in sentences. It simply stays present. That kind of prayer often begins when words are no longer available. You are not required to feel inspired to be faithful. You are not required to feel strong to be devoted. Faith is not a performance of certainty. It is often a quiet staying when you no longer feel uplifted by staying. This is where faith becomes real in a deeper way. Not dramatic, not emotional, but grounded and honest. There is a danger in confusing spiritual maturity with emotional numbness. They are not the same. Emotional numbness comes from suppressing pain. Spiritual maturity comes from letting pain exist without letting it define you. If your heart feels tired, it may be because it has been honest longer than your mind knows how to explain. God does not measure you by how confident you feel. He is not disappointed by your heaviness. He is not waiting for you to regain enthusiasm before he draws near. In fact, this quieter season is often where his presence becomes less dramatic but more stable, less felt but more real. There is a story beneath your fatigue. It is not about failure. It is about endurance. You stayed soft in a world that rewards hardness. You stayed open in situations that taught you to protect yourself. You believed when outcomes did not cooperate. This costs something, and that cost deserves acknowledgement, not correction. If your heart is tired of believing, do not force it to cheer up. Do not pressure it to feel grateful. Let it be tired. Let that tiredness be seen, even if only by God. Faith does not die when it rests. It dies when it is shamed for resting. In the quiet of this season, something important is happening. Faith is shifting from effort to trust, from movement to presence, from asking for signs to learning to stay without them. This is not regression. It is a deepening that does not look impressive from the outside. Your heart is not broken. It is worn from carrying what mattered. And worn things do not need lectures. They need gentleness. There comes a point when the soul stops asking for answers and starts longing for permission. Permission to stop explaining. Permission to stop proving that faith is still alive. Permission to stop carrying the quiet fear that if you admit your tiredness, something sacred will be taken away. But nothing is taken from you when you tell the truth. What is false falls away. What is real remains. Many people believe faith is about holding on tightly. In reality, much of faith is about learning when to loosen your grip. Not because you no longer care, but because holding too tightly has become a way of controlling pain. You were never meant to manage your spiritual life through tension. Trust cannot grow where the nervous system is constantly braced. A tired heart often feels guilty. It tells itself that others will be grateful for what you have, that saints endured worse, that weakness should be corrected quickly. But guilt does not restore faith. It only teaches the heart to hide. And hidden fatigue does not heal. It hardens or collapses. Neither is what God desires. There is a subtle difference between obedience and overextension. Obedience flows from relationship. Overextension flows from fear of loss. When the heart is tired of believing, it may be because faith quietly turned into responsibility. You began carrying outcomes that were never yours to carry. You began measuring yourself by endurance instead of by honesty. The quiet invitation of this season is not to believe harder, but to trust differently. To stop using faith as a way to push yourself forward and start letting it become a place where you can stand without effort. Faith as ground, not as climb. This change feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to motion. Stillness can feel like failure when movement has been your proof of devotion. There is a moment in prayer when you realize you are not asking for anything new. You are simply present. You are not trying to be heard. You are allowing yourself to be seen. This is not spiritual laziness, it is spiritual honesty. The heart finally stops performing and starts resting. God is not impatient with your weariness. He does not rush you back into enthusiasm. He does not demand that you feel hopeful before he remains close. In the Psalms, there is room for heaviness that does not resolve quickly. There is space for waiting without clarity. This is not weakness of faith, it is realism of relationship. When belief becomes heavy, it is often because the heart has been faithful without being comforted. Not because God withheld comfort, but because you learned to survive without expecting it. You became strong, reliable, composed. Over time, this strength can become isolation. You forget how to receive. Receiving is vulnerable. It requires admitting that you cannot sustain yourself indefinitely, that you need something you cannot produce. Many people find it easier to give, to endure, to show up, than to receive rest. But faith is not a one-directional effort. It is a relationship that includes being held. There is a sacred kind of trust that does not look like confidence. It looks like staying when you are tired, like not abandoning prayer even when it feels thin, like continuing to choose goodness without expecting emotional reward. This is not empty persistence. It is quiet fidelity. You may notice that joy feels distant right now. Do not chase it. Joy returns on its own when the heart feels safe again. Safety comes not from answers, but from consistency, from knowing that you are not required to be different for God to remain near. The tired heart does not need more promises. It needs assurance that it is allowed to stop striving, that it is not being evaluated, that rest is not a test you can fail. Faith matures when it learns that God does not disappear when you exhale. This season is teaching you how to stay without tension, how to be faithful without force, how to remain open without bleeding. These are not small lessons. They reshape the inner life in ways that cannot be rushed. You are not losing faith. You are learning how to carry it without injuring yourself. There is a quiet courage in staying when nothing is being rewarded, not noticed, not affirmed, just stayed. Most people never see this kind of faith because it does not announce itself. It does not produce dramatic stories. It does not even feel strong from the inside. But it is often the most honest form faith ever takes. When the heart is tired of believing, it is usually because it has crossed a threshold. Earlier, belief was fueled by expectation. You trusted and waited for something to move, to change, to respond. Now belief continues without that fuel. You remain, even though the future feels undefined. This is not a collapse of faith. It is a transition from hope based on outcomes to trust based on presence. This is where many people become afraid. They sense that something familiar has ended, but they cannot name what has begun. They fear that the dullness they feel is spiritual decay. In reality, it is often the shedding of illusions. Faith no longer relies on emotional confirmation. It becomes quieter, steadier, less dramatic. That quiet can feel like loss if you expected faith to always feel alive. But faith was never meant to entertain you. It was meant to hold you. And holding does not always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels ordinary. Sometimes it feels heavy. Sometimes it feels like nothing at all. Yet underneath that surface, something is stabilizing. A tired heart is often a heart that has learned too much. You have seen that life does not resolve neatly, that prayer does not always produce visible change, that doing the right thing does not guarantee protection. This knowledge can exhaust the part of you that once believed everything would make sense. But it also deepens the part of you that knows how to remain without guarantees. God does not ask you to be naive. He does not require you to pretend that everything is fine. He meets you where clarity has ended and honesty has begun. Faith does not shrink in that place. It simplifies. It lets go of explanations and keeps only what is essential. What remains essential is this: you are not alone in your tiredness. You are not tolerated in it. You are accompanied, even when you do not feel it, even when prayer feels like silence. Presence does not vanish when sensation fades. There is a temptation to abandon everything when belief feels this heavy, to step away entirely. Sometimes people do. But many do not, because something quieter than enthusiasm keeps them grounded. A sense that leaving would not bring relief, that running would not restore strength. So they stay, not heroically, but honestly. Staying does not mean forcing yourself to feel different. It means allowing yourself to be exactly where you are without self-judgment. It means letting faith be small if it needs to be, letting prayer be wordless, letting trust exist without explanation. This is often the season when people finally stop confusing God with their expectations of Him. They stop negotiating, stop promising, stop measuring progress. They simply remain. And in that remaining, faith becomes less about belief as an idea and more about relationship as a fact. You may not feel inspired again for a long time, or you may. That is not the measure. The measure is that you are still here, still open, still honest, still allowing yourself to be seen as you are, not as you think you should be. A tired heart does not need to be fixed. It needs to be respected. It has carried weight without collapsing. It has endured complexity without becoming bitter. It has stayed open longer than many would. That is not weakness, that is formation. Faith in this stage is no longer loud enough to impress others. It is strong enough to sustain you, quiet enough to not demand attention, deep enough to not require proof. This is where faith becomes something you live from, not something you perform. If you take anything from this season, let it be this. You are allowed to rest inside faith. You are allowed to believe without effort. You are allowed to remain without enthusiasm. Nothing essential is being lost. This is not the end of belief. It is the place where belief stops exhausting you and starts holding you. Walk in the light, even on the days it feels distant.